know how many of you have seen the news yesterday, but there was a guy at the CarMax in Inglewood. Did any of you see that? There was a guy at the CarMax in Inglewood, and so I guess he took his car to have it inspected and checked out, and for them to offer him a price for the cost of the car. And if any of you have been to CarMax, they'll probably be right in the middle of what Kelly Blue Book says that your car is worth and that kind of thing. And so the guy was just not happy. He was not happy with what it is that they assessed his car at being worth. And he got into an argument, with the people at CarMax. Then he got into his car and tried to turn CarMax into car minimum. Because he drove through, and he went through the front plate of the store, backed up in the store. 8 people were injured as a result of it. 2 of them are in critical condition. And then he went through and exited through the back of the store. So, you look at that, and he was caught by the police, and he has been arrested since then. But you do wonder, what was going through his mind as that was happening? What was going on in his life that he felt like that was the resolution to the issue that he was dealing with CarMax and everything. And so, that just reminded me of is that in our society, people really are hurting. They really are. There's so many people that are hurting. And then also now you look at the 8 people that were injured and their families and, how they're navigating that. And hopefully no one's injured permanently, that they're able to overcome, their injuries. Hopefully the people that are, in the hospital in critical condition are able to have a full recovery. But you look at all of those instances and you see that people really are wrestling. And I think, in our society, there are people that are struggling with grief and everything as well. And it's important for us to realize that there are more reasons to grieve than just, for example, losing someone. Sometimes you might grieve if you've lost your house. You might grieve if you've lost your job. You might grieve if you've lost a relationship. You might grieve if, if you lost a family member. It's not just one reason that people grieve. It's any time that we face a significant loss in life that we can struggle with grieving. And it just makes me think of, I remember one time, and I may have told the story before, but there was a friend of mine that had lost her mom. And so being a friend and being a pastor, I decided to go over to, her house, and, her family was there. And I walked in, and I greeted the family, and then I sat down on the couch. And as I was sitting on the couch, there became this war that was happening inside of me. Because as a pastor, and as a friend, but especially as a pastor, I'm supposed to offer words of comfort, right? I am supposed to offer words of, to navigate this thing. And so, but in my head, I wanted to make sure that the words that I said were really applicable and really an encouragement. So I had already made the determination, I'm not going to say anything that I feel like doesn't work. And so I'm warring with myself. So I'm sitting on the couch, I'm warring with myself, things to say she's in a better place. Because people always say that, right? They're in a better place. But are they really? The better place, is it with me? So I was like, no, that's a dumb thing to say. I'm not going to say that. And, God's will be done. Well, is that really God's will, or God has a plan? Well, was that part of the plan? So all of these things are going through my mind. And so I say nothing because I don't want to say something stupid. And I don't want to just say all the cliches. So I just sat there and I said nothing for an hour. Nothing. And then after an hour or so, I got up, said goodbye to my friend and her sister and, other family members. And then I left. And when I got in the car, I was like, you are so stupid. You call yourself a pastor, and you had nothing to say. Nothing. You would even offer to pray. So I beat myself up. And I saw her about a week later at the funeral service, and then I saw her about another week or so after that. And she said something really interesting to me. She said, Ken, I want to take this time out to just say thank you. And I was like, for what? you know? And she said, when you came to my house, you were just present. You didn't say a word. You were just there. And I can't begin to express how grateful I was for that. Because I had some friends that would come over, and she said, some of my friends just said some really stupid stuff that I really didn't need to hear. And I'm thinking, praise God I didn't say that. you know? And then she said, I also want to thank you for not asking me to pray. And I was thinking and I said, really? She said, yeah, I just wasn't in the headspace. I was really angry with God at that point. So the last thing I wanted to do was pray. And she said, you were one of the only friends that did not grab my hand and pray or make me pray. You were just there. And I thought, well, God, sometimes I bumble into service. It wasn't the plot, it wasn't the plan. It was just because I just bumbled my way through the whole thing. But it really did get me thinking about how to be able to be there with people as they navigate loss. Now, we've been doing this series called Certainty in the Times of Uncertainty. And in this series, again, it was motivated by just conversations that I had been having because of fears that people were feeling because of the fires that happened so close to us, so close to home, and just being able to navigate that, and how do we deal with the possibilities of, what if this happens, or what if that happens, or what if this happens, and there's a lot of fear that I sensed, and there was one sermon that I was trying to find a reading plan for, and I just happened to see there was a reading plan called Certainty in the Times of Uncertainty, and I thought, oh, that's a great title. I'm going to use that. So I can tell you now, this title is not a Ken original. It's not. It's just too brilliant. So with that, but I thought, oh, that's a great one. I'm just going to use it. And actually, we did use that plan, I think, the first week and everything as well. But, with that, what I wanted to do is I wanted to instill, I guess, confidence that no matter what it is that we're going through, that we can still be confident because of the fact that God is with us, even when there is no clarity, even when there are more questions than there are answers, even in the midst of when we are grieving, that we can really trust Him. And so the first week we talked about, as followers of Jesus, that one of the things we want to try to do is move from what if to even if. So what if this happens to, even if it does happen, this is how I'm going to navigate this process in prayer and in my faith. And again, I reminded everyone, make sure you figure out your even if before you are in a situation, so that you know how it's already muscle memory of what it is that you're going to do. And then the next week, what we talked about is we said that we are the best version of ourselves, or that we shine brightest when we are the best version of ourselves when it matters most. And in that, I just talked about confidence and trusting in God and who He is, and also being able to be an example of confidence, and that we can inspire others in their relationship with Him as well. And then the following week, after that, we talked about that the battle that we face is not what our circumstances do to us, but in us. And in that message, we talked about just silence and just how important it is for us just to kind of slow things down so that we can be able to connect with God and who He is when we go through those moments of struggle or with difficulty. And then last week, we talked about a solution. Not the solution if you're grieving, but a solution that can help with grieving. Because there's a lot of solutions, and so we need to process and work through them. But a solution that can also help is in those times when we're grieving, when we want to kind of move inward, to move outward in a sense, and try to find ways to serve, even when we're in the midst of grieving, because we could still be an inspiration to others. And again, we have to be wise about how we're navigating that, because I don't want it to be done out of obligation and everything as well. And so what I wanted to do today is everybody raise your hand. Everybody raise your hand and repeat after me. I am a minister. Say it again. I am a minister. So that means now you have officially been ministerized. Like deputized, but now you're official ministers. But let me tell you, the moment that you said yes to Jesus, you became a minister. Just because you don't have the word pastor in front of your name, or reverend in front of your name, or doctor in front of your name, or just because you don't have reverend, doctor, pastor in front of your name, or minister, just because you are still a minister. Every single one of us in this room. And so now the question becomes then is, how do I become an effective minister to those who are grieving? How do I do that? Because I have made the mistakes in the past. And I have said things to people trying to be an encouragement that I regret. And the reality is, this is not something that we're really trained on how to do. It's just not. So I thought, well, why don't we end this series by looking at what are some things that we can do so that we can be able to effectively help people who are grieving and going through their things. And here's the reason why. I'm going to share, these are the top worst cliches to use when people are grieving. And odds are, you may have heard some of these cliches. And again, remember what I said before, you may be grieving a loss of a job, the loss of a friendship, the loss of a relationship, the loss of something financially, the loss of, just any time that you go through a major loss in your life, is not just losing someone that we love. Anytime we go through a major loss in our lives and we grieve, there are times when people try to encourage us and they say things that are really, really not intelligent and not encouraging. Now, let me tell you this right now. It's not from a heart of not being encouraging, right? They're trying to be helpful. And so sometimes because of that, you want to give them a little bit of grace, but you still want to knock them out, right? But you know that they're just trying to be helpful, but sometimes they just don't say that which is the most helpful in the moment. So here are the top ones that I found on the internet. Time heals all wounds, right? Time heals all wounds. Or how about this one? You may not see it now, but later you'll see the good in this. This was one of the worst ones. God needs him or her more than you do. And I've heard people actually say that. Yeah, really. But yeah, I've heard. It was God's will. Or it was in God's plan. That kind of thing. Oh, how about this one? What doesn't kill you makes you, strong enough to knock you out, right? Yeah, what doesn't kill you make you stronger. Or here's one. God never gives us more than we can handle. To which we say, well, maybe God needs to trust me less, right? You're such a warrior. You're such a warrior. You are so strong in going through this. I could never go through what you're going through. Words trying to be encouragement. When I think of your situation, I'm reminded of how blessed I am. Right. And for those of you that experience great breakups, don't people always say this? And especially when you don't want to hear it. But there's more fish in the sea. It's like, no, I don't want more fish. I want that fish, right? I want that fish, kind of thing. So if those are things that we should not say, then what can we do? What can we say? How can we be helpful to those who are hurting, those who are grieving, in such a way that when we walk away, they go, you know what? I'm so glad that they were there for me to support me and encourage me in this process. They were so helpful. And so here's what I thought we could do, is I decided I wanted to go to the expert on comfort. I wanted to go to the expert to look at how he navigates when people go through difficult time. And so I thought, okay, God, you know us, you built us, so how would you help someone who is going through impossibilities? And I found this really great passage. It says this in Psalm 34, verses 17 and 18. It says, the Lord hears his people when they call to him for help. He rescues them from all their troubles. The Lord is close to the brokenhearted. He rescues those whose spirits are crushed. He's there. And so as I was thinking about it, here's the deal. I think in order for us to really be able to help those who are going through difficult times is we have to do this. And you can see right on the screen. We have to learn to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. We have to learn to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. Because sometimes the reason why we say things that, and sometimes, and you know you've done it, like you try to be helpful, and you already know coming out of your mouth, this is not going to be helpful. Like you already know as you say it. But part of it is the reason why you say it is because you're uncomfortable, and you're trying to bring them comfort, but also trying to be comfortable in that situation. And the reality is, like, grief is uncomfortable. Like, there's certain feelings that are comfortable to be around, right? Laughter. Laughter is comfortable. Matter of fact, sometimes we will laugh because everybody else is laughing. And what are they laughing at? And we have no idea what they're laughing at. But it's something that we feel comfortable with. Or celebration. When someone celebrates, when my Buccaneers won the Super Bowl, that was celebration that was there. And what was really great is people were like, congratulations, Ken. Like, I won the Super Bowl. Congratulations, Ken. And they were celebrating along with me because they knew how much of a fan I am of the Buccaneers. So we know how to celebrate when people celebrate. It's comfortable. We step into it. But when someone's grieving, and they're going through difficulty, that's uncomfortable. And so sometimes we just don't know how to process that. So the biggest challenge is to learn how to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. And so with that in mind, like, I think one of the best places to maybe learn how to be comfortable with being uncomfortable, really, one of the best places is to talk to a nurse. Like if you know anyone that is a nurse, and there's something about nurses, because they're around people who are uncomfortable all day, every day, for however long their shift is. And a good nurse, and many of us, right, when you've been in the hospital and you've had a good nurse, doesn't it make a difference for your stay in the hospital? Like, I could be a miserable patient, but if the nurse is there and he or she is a really great nurse, it brings comfort. You know, there's certain, when the nurse walks in the room and you go, oh my gosh, I am so glad he or she is here, kind of thing. Because why? Because they know how to comfort you in your misery. So I would say if you really want to learn how to comfort those who are uncomfortable and going through difficulty, talk to a nurse. Because there's some really great insight that you can get from talking to them as well. And so I want to encourage you too. Like, if you know someone who is a nurse, man, love on them, clap for them, celebrate them, because they really are someone who's bringing comfort to those who are really wrestling or struggling. But one of the things that I have seen in nurses that are really good at what they do, there's something else that they do as well that's also really good. And that is they listen. They listen. They ask questions, and then they listen. And then after they've listened, then they try to provide a solution. Those tend to be your best nurses. Right? Would you agree? Those tend to be your best nurses. And so for us then, what we can learn from that is maybe what we can do is, if someone is grieving, is learn how to listen. It's just learn how to be there and be able to be a support to them by simply listening and just being a soundboard, just being a soundboard. There's a passage that I wanted to share with you. Romans chapter 12, verse 15 says this: be happy with those who are happy and fix those who weep. Now, do you think that's what that passage really says? Fix those. But I altered the passage a little bit because I think in reality, when it comes to people that are struggling, I think that's what we try to do. is we try to bring comfort, but we're trying to fix their pain. We're trying to fix how they're navigating their pain. We're trying to fix the difficulty that they're going through. But I've learned something about myself is I'm not qualified to fix anyone's pain. I'm not. Why? Because the last time I checked, my name's not God. So I'm not qualified. And I think sometimes what we try to do is in our effort to try to help someone navigate, in our effort to try to help someone fix their pain, then what we do is that's when we get uncomfortable because we're trying to fix it, and then what happens is that's when we do things that are not beneficial. But I can't. I can't fix their pain. I can't fix their circumstance. I can't fix their emotions. I can't. So then what should I do? And that is when we look at what verse 15 really says. It says, be happy with those who are happy, and what? Weep with those who weep. Weep with those who weep. So, in other words, it's not my job to fix you when you're weeping. It's just my job to weep with you. It's to weep with you. Just to be able to be there and walk through this process with you and support you. That's my job. That's my role. Now, I don't know about you, but for me personally, it's like, right? I just have to be there. I don't have to fix anything. Just be there. Just be present. Just be compassionate. Just be kind. Just be there. And usually what happens, and we know that too, usually when we're grieving, I'm not necessarily looking for someone to fix my grief. Right? I'm not really looking for someone to fix my grief. I'm just looking for someone that could just kind of be there while I'm grieving, to walk with me as I walk through my grief. I love what it says in Isaiah chapter 43, verse 2. This is what God says. It says, when you go through deep waters, I will be what? I will be with you. When you go through rivers of difficulty, you will not drown. When you walk through the fire of oppression, you will not be burned up. The flames will not consume you. Now, one of the things that's really important when we look at Scripture is to look at what Scripture doesn't say as well as what it does say. And what that passage doesn't say is, when you walk through water, I will part the waters for you to walk through. Is that what it says? No. It says, when you walk through the waters, I will be with you. You will not drown. You will not drown. So what I need to do is I need to lean on God while God is doing the swimming. I need to lean on God while God is doing the swimming. Because what happens is, and again, when you're being rescued by a lifeguard, many times what they'll do is they will let you, if you're not ready to surrender yet, they will let you suffer a little bit until you're ready to surrender. Because if you don't, then what happens is you risk pulling them down as well. So I think sometimes that's what we can be guilty of doing with God. Like, God, help me, but I'm still going to try to swim myself for a little bit. We can be guilty of that with him. And so with that, it's just important for us to understand that he says, look, I'm not. He also says, when you walk through the flames, I'm going to take an extinguisher and I'm going to put them out. Is that what it says? No. It just says when you walk through the fires, you will not be burned. Why? Why won't we drown and why won't we be burned? Because he will be with us. And so that's what we can learn from this process too, is just be with someone. Just be there. And here's the thing, and I want to say this is really important too, is I think a lot of times when we try to be there for someone, sometimes our approach is this. I know what you're going through because I've grieved before. So I know what you're feeling. I know what this process is like. But again, this goes back to what we said last week, which is really important. The reality is grief never hits two people exactly the same. So I may have been through a similar situation, but I really don't know what you feel. I don't. Because I don't know how you're processing your grieving. And so what happens is when I try to implement the way that I navigated grief on you, but if it doesn't fit you, then again, I create more tension for you because I'm trying to help you grieve in a way that doesn't really fit you. It fits me, but it doesn't fit you. So that's why it's so important that instead of trying to fix someone in their grief. Now, I want to say this as well. This does not mean that I'm minimizing what it is that you experience in your grief. I'm not doing that at all. What you went through is what you went through. So I'm not doing that. I'm just saying don't apply the way that you navigated grief to them and think that this is how they should navigate grief as well. The biggest thing that we should just do is try to walk through, again, their journey with them and be able to learn from them. And so here's what we're going to do for the rest of the message is we're going to look at some things. What are some things that we can say that would be helpful? What are some things we can say? There's a website that I went to that had some really good ideas. It was called homesteaderlife.com. It was a life insurance company. And they said, if you want to help someone who's grieving, here's what we suggest. And I thought, oh, those are really great. So we're gonna use some of those. And here's one that you can see right on the screen. It says, instead of sending prayers, because you know how we say, I'll pray for you. It says, we included you and your family in the prayer requests at our church. Please know you have the support of our entire faith community during this difficult time. Also, instead of saying, and Lynn, you're going to take it down. So, and also instead of saying, I will pray for you, just, actually, how about this? How about actually pray for them? How about that? And then you can send a text and say, hey, you were on my mind. I just want you to know I prayed for you, and I'm here for you. Just something as simple as that. But it's one of those things where I don't know if you've noticed this, but there's starting to be a point where people are on social media at least are starting to mock the pray for this, pray for that, and they're starting to mock it. And I think one of the reasons why is because many times there's this promise of prayer, but no prayer is really happening. It's a good sentiment. Pray for. Let's pray for. So one of the ways that you can really be a great minister to someone who's going through grief is let them know, I prayed for you today. Like, it's already done. I've already prayed for you, and I'm here for you. Here's another one that they said that I thought was really good. Instead of keeping you in my thoughts, try, I've been thinking about you. Would you like to meet for coffee soon? Or, and I thought this was great, there's no need to respond, but I just wanted to let you know that I'm thinking about you. There's no need to respond. I just want to let you know that I'm thinking about you. So the great thing about both of those is, in one is saying, hey, I'm available for you if you need me. But the good thing about the other is, because I can tell you, when someone's going through a moment of grief and people are contacting them, people are sending them texts, sometimes, and this is kind of interesting, but people are that way, sometimes when you're grieving and people send you a text, they expect you to respond back. I'm grieving. Right, so to have someone send to you like, hey, there's no need to respond. I just want to let you know that you're in my mind. Like, it's kind of freeing in some ways, but it's also caring. To say that, wow, you understand what it is I'm going through. And you give me the freedom. And sometimes what you may find is they're more likely to respond than not respond by you giving them freedom to not respond. But it's just something that really is helpful. And we're not doing it to be manipulative or anything like that, but it's just a way for us to show that we care. Because the reality is, if someone is grieving, they have a lot on their plate that they're trying to figure out and trying to navigate. And now if you add one more text that they're expected to respond, it's just too much. So when you just say to them, hey, no need to respond to this, it really is a little bit more compassionate. It really does set them free in those ways. How about this one? I love this one. Instead of, let me know how I can help, try, I'm picking up dinner for the family. What would you like? I'm picking up dinner for the family. So, because sometimes when people are grieving, they're making a lot of decisions. And if you say, how can I help? It's just one more decision they have to figure out. So if you were to say, especially if you know them really well, and you know what they like, hey, I'm on my way home. I'm going to go buy Kentucky Fried Chicken. I'm bringing you a 16-packer. You know, whatever that might. I've been to Kentucky Fried Chicken in so long, but you understand what I'm saying. I'm bringing you chicken and mashed. Now I will say that Kentucky Fried Chicken has some good biscuits, right? But I'm bringing you those too. But I'm bringing you your favorite. I know that you love a good burger, so I stopped and grabbed a burger for you, kind of thing, and I'm gonna drop it off for you. It's just a way, again, to make one less decision, but it's kind of a way to be able to be there to support them as well. And how about this one? This is the last one. Instead of God has a plan or God is in control, try, I'm so sorry for what you're going through. I'm so sorry for what you're going through. Because, in reality, when I'm grieving and I've suffered loss, although it is true that God has a plan, but I'm in a state where I am significantly questioning what that plan is. And I'm in a state where it may be difficult for me to see at that moment that his plan and his will is good. And part of that, too, is now it makes me question, well, was his plan for me to lose this or lose them? But I think we say that because we're trying to bring comfort. So I love the idea of, instead of saying that, saying, I'm so sorry for what it is that you're going through. And just kind of walking through that with them. Now, also, you may be in a situation where you can't call them, but you want to send a text. So there's some advice when it comes to texting as well. Texting is not the place for counseling. It's not. And so if someone reaches out to you and they kind of want to go back and forth with you, maybe what you might want to do is encourage them, like, hey, why don't we get together? Because what happens with texting is what texting doesn't do is it doesn't offer the nuances, and it actually opens the door for something to be misunderstood. And you're trying to be helpful, and you may say something that you meant in kindness, but because they can't see your facial expression, and even though emojis are great, but they don't always still communicate what it is that you're trying to say, because they also can't read your nonverbals, they can't hear the intonation of your voice. So sometimes it's better to do counseling actually in person. And remember, our counseling really is just listening. It's really just listening. But with that in mind, there are some things that you can do in texting that are really helpful. And so I found this list as well. And so you can see this right on the screen. So if you need to send a text, keep it sweet, keep it simple. But here's some things that you could text. I'm so sorry for your loss. I'm here if you need to talk. How can I help? It's okay to feel this way. I'm here to listen. And again, I just prayed for you. So those are examples of text that you could send. Keep it short, keep it simple, keep it sweet. But again, it just shows that you care, and it opens the door for you to hopefully be able to continue to be able to be there and minister. And I can also tell you this, too. If I'm grieving, the last thing I want to read is a text novel. Right? Last thing I want to read. So keep it short, keep it simple, but also let them know that you're there for them if they need you. So these are tools. So now, when someone's grieving, all of you are trained to be a minister to someone who is grieving. And hopefully these will be tools that you'll never need. Hopefully they're tools that you'll never need. But if you are in a situation, and I want to encourage you with this, like if you're thinking, oh my goodness, what did Ken say? You can go back on our website. This will be there. So you can fast forward at least to the end and go, okay. That will be helpful, for me and everything as well. Now, again, here at Encounter, one of the things that we want to encourage us to do is to grow in our relationship with God, grow in our relationship with others, as well as grow in our relationship with ourselves. That's because that's how Jesus laid out. He said, love your neighbor. He says, love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Love your neighbor as yourself. So in loving God, we say love up. So we hit every message with with looking at these three principles. So love up, based upon this, is look for ways that God is with you. Look for ways that God is with you. There have been times when I've been there for people who are going through difficult moments, and God kind of just shows up. He kind of just shows up. There have been times where God has given me insight that I wouldn't have had if it weren't for him. There are times where, as they're navigating, and again, one of the things that I do with people who are grieving is I tend to ask more questions than I offer answers. And so there have been times where I've asked questions that I know that, wow, that was a God-inspired question because I never would have thought about that question myself. So it's important for you to realize. And if you'll notice this, if you ever look at the Encounter Community Church logo, one of the things you'll see is that it is composed of arrows. So there's one arrow, that's the backbone of the E, and that arrow is an up arrow for love up. Then you'll also see that the middle of the E, there's an arrow that's pointing towards the E, or towards the body. That arrow is for love in. And if you look at the top and the bottom of the E, you'll see that there are two arrows pointing out. And that represents love out. And the reason why there's two arrows is because every time we go out, God goes with us. So that's the idea of that part of our logo as well. So he's with you. He's with you. You are not helping someone navigate this by themselves. And I would encourage you to even start with, like, God, my friend or my family member is going through a really difficult time right now. God, I just pray for your wisdom. Help me to be able to be a comfort to them. Help me. And help me to see you in this process as well. But look for ways that God's with you. Love out. Be an ear more than a mouth. Be an ear more than a mouth. And I know, I was trying to figure out, like, how do I say that more kindly? Because that's like, boom. But here's the reality. There's a proverb that says it really well. It says, he who prescribes before listening, that is his folly and his shame. So we want to be people who listen. Or, in James 1:19, it says, be quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to become angry. And as Judge Judy would say, God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth. That means you should listen twice as much as you speak. But one of the greatest tools that you have when you are ministering to someone who's grieving, it's your ears. And just listen. Listen for the pain, listen for the hurt, listen for the things that you could be praying for, but also listen for the need. Listen for the need. Listen for the ways that they're overwhelmed. And maybe that might be ways that you can step in. If they're stressing out, like, oh my goodness, I have to deal with this, but the kids have to be picked up, then maybe that's when you could say, you know what, hey, call the school, give them permission for me to pick the kids up, and I'll go pick the kids up for you. That's one less thing you have to worry about. So being able to listen will also give us an opportunity to know how can we respond to what the need is as well. And then love in. And this is really important. Be patient with yourself if you make a mistake. Because I can tell you now, when people are grieving, I have fumbled and bumbled. I have made some mistakes in the past. And, I'm better at it now. But that does not mean that I won't make mistakes in the future. And one of the things that I did that really was a blessing to me and a blessing to them as well is I said something really stupid to someone once. It was just me trying to be a comfort. It was stupid. And then I got in the car and I drove away and I thought, that was stupid. Like, why did you say that? So then what I did was I waited a few days and I called them back later. And I said, when I was with you, I said something really dumb, trying to be comforting. It was like, oh, you'll be okay. You'll get through this. Or something along those lines. And I said something really dumb. I'm so sorry if it hurt your feelings. And they were like, thank you. Thank you. Actually, it didn't bother me at all. But thank you. Thank you for calling. Thank you for caring. And so if you make a mistake, be patient with yourself. And if you can, apologize for it and continue to move forward. Because that also shows that you care and that you were just trying to be a blessing in those ways as well. But that's my prayer. So hopefully this will help us in being able to be better ministers for those who are grieving and who are going through difficulties. Father, I just thank you.